Story time about how my crazy sister tried to steal my husband and my child while I was in the army. My sister and I have always been competitive our entire lives. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. Her and I actually didn't grow up together. We don't have the same mother. We actually met when we were teenagers, which is not a good time to meet your sister because you're already very insecure at that time. She was always a little bit insecure about her looks, and it got a lot worse when she met me. She was always comparing herself to me and asking my dad which one of us he thought was prettier. My dad, of course, would get really upset and tell her not to be like that, but I could tell that she was always judging me. Sometimes she would make fun of the way I dressed, and if I ever wore a tank top or a crop top, she would call me McChubby. Mind you, I am not chubby at all, and even if I was, it's still so wrong to call someone that. Fast forward 10 years later, I married the man of my dreams. We have a really good relationship and a 1-year-old. I joined the army straight out of high school, and I really love it. We finally got pregnant after 3 years of trying. I was told I was going to be stationed away for 2 months. My husband luckily has a job where he can work from home, and my mother lives really close to us, so I knew I was leaving the baby in good hands. My husband luckily supports me in everything I want to do, so he didn't have a problem with this. I would see my sister from time to time, but we never really hung out or anything, and she never really made an effort to meet our baby either. Last I'd heard, she'd been in a really bad relationship. Apparently, she even had to get a restraining order, and she had to move back home to live with my dad. When I finally ended up going overseas, my husband and I would Zoom every single day. This is when things took a dark turn. My husband told me that my sister came by one day to visit, and that she was full on flirting with him, telling him how good looking he is. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. My husband told me that she came over and started flirting with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. He asked me what he should do, and I told him to just act like normal. A few days later, my husband tells me that my sister comes over with a tray of lasagna, which she knows is his favorite dish. And here's the worst part. She brought a thong bikini and sat by the pool for hours. Apparently, she wanted to get a tan. Then she asked him if they could watch a movie together, but my husband made up an excuse saying that he had to get back on his laptop for work. He even took a video of her while she was lounging in the pool, and we both laughed at it. A few days after that, he tells me she comes over crying. Apparently, some guy wouldn't leave her alone, so she asked him if she could sleep over because she didn't feel safe. She decided to walk around the house in her underwear and an oversized t-shirt. But here's what really got to me. Apparently, she was making an effort to get to know the baby, so she would go out of her way to feed him and play with him. And out of nowhere, the baby calls her mama. She never made an effort to see the baby when I was there, so why was she making an effort now? Then my sister sent me a picture of my husband and the baby asleep on the couch. And she sends me another message saying, "Your husband is so beautiful." Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. After she sent me the picture of my baby and my husband sleeping on the couch, I asked her what she was doing there. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. Then she had the audacity to tell me that she just wanted to help my husband out. I told her that he didn't need any help and that she could leave the house. That's when she asked me if I was insecure about her being around my husband since she's so attractive. As soon as she said that, I tried calling her, but she wouldn't answer. Then she decided to ignore my phone calls and messages for 2 days. So I called my husband and told him what she said. The first thing he did was reassure me and told me that I had nothing to worry about and that he would tell her to leave himself. I didn't want her to start any drama in front of the baby, so I told my husband to just let her stay another night. Instead, I called my dear dad and I told him everything that she was doing. I even told my dad that he needed to go pick her up right away. My dad didn't even question me, he just went to get her. He knew exactly what she was like. 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from my husband laughing his head off. He tells me my dad came into the house and told her that she needed to leave with him. When she refused, my dad simply grabbed her by the arm and dragged her out of the house. And on the way out, he could hear my dad asking her what she thought she was doing. He even told her to stop walking around in her underwear around my husband. I only wish I could have seen it myself. But it doesn't end there. My sister decided to sneak out of my dad's house and back to mine. And this time she wore lingerie underneath a coat. When he opens the door, she takes off the coat, revealing the lingerie. My husband politely asked her to leave, but she said she knew he wanted her. Then he just shut the door in her face. I got home a few weeks after that and I confronted my sister. She told me that I'm a bad wife for leaving my husband and my child, and that eventually he's gonna end up cheating on me. She denies having come to the house with the lingerie on. How should I handle the situation? Should I tell my dad or just let it go? Story time about how I became obsessed with my doctor and faked a heart attack just to see him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm 26 years old and desperate for a husband. I come from a very antiquated family. My parents think I'm already an old maid because I haven't had kids, and that no man will ever want me because I'm too old. For the past 4 years, I've been on a mission to find a husband. I signed up to a bunch of dating apps. I went on so many dates, but still never found anyone I was compatible with, or anyone that wanted to marry me for that matter. Last year, we had a COVID scare in my family and we all went to get tested. I started feeling a little bit sick, so I went to a doctor. This doctor, let me tell you, when he walked into the room, I nearly fainted. He was the most gorgeous man I'd ever seen in my life. He was also so nice because obviously he was my doctor, but he seemed so caring. I quickly became infatuated with him and kept making up excuses to have to go see him. I even came up with this plan that I was gonna get him to fall in love with me. I told my mom and she ended up telling my dad and they thought I was completely crazy. I stalked the doctor on social media and found out that he wasn't married. He did have a girlfriend though, but this was no problem for me. I would do my makeup and dress up really nice just to go see him. But this backfired on me. He started to think that I was a hypochondriac and that I was making up all my symptoms. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I became obsessed with my doctor and even faked a heart attack just to see him. Disclaimers is not my story time. That's when he told me that I was a hypochondriac and that I was probably just imagining/faking all my symptoms. I pretended to act outraged and I said absolutely not. He told me I just needed to relax. But this is the best part. He complimented me on my hair, and that's when I convinced myself that he was in love with me. From that day on, I would follow him everywhere. Anytime he would go to buy coffee, I would end up being there, and we would just casually bump into each other. I thought he wasn't suspecting anything, until one day I get home and my parents sit me down to tell me that the doctor noticed that I had been following him everywhere. And he also asked them to find me a new doctor, and that he could no longer see me. I was devastated. I felt like he had broken up with me. My parents forbade me from going near his office, but this didn't stop me. I decided to go straight to his house and confess my feelings. As soon as he opened the door, I told him that I loved him and that I just wanted to have his children. He did not take this very well. He told me to leave. When I got home, my parents didn't let me out of the house for a few days. So I did what I had to do. I faked a heart attack and insisted that the only doctor I wanted to see me was him. My parents had no choice but to take me to him. That's when he told my parents that I had made everything up and that I did not have a heart attack. It's been almost a year and I'm still trying to find ways to get back into his life. I'm running out of excuses. Can you guys help me think of some? Yes, I know this is a little bit crazy, but I know that he could fall in love with me and we would be very happy. What do you think I should do? Story time about how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 months. He's a personal trainer, so he's really into fitness. When we started dating, I wasn't super fit, but I definitely was toned. Unfortunately, I got the Rona, so I got fired from my job because I couldn't work for 2 weeks. I was super sick and I really became depressed. I basically sat on my couch for those 2 weeks and ate a lot. Before I knew it, I had gained 7 pounds. When I finished my quarantine, I finally was able to see my boyfriend. And when he first came into my house to see me, he looked shocked. He looked me up and down and said, "Did you gain weight?" I said, "Yeah, I probably gained like 7 or 10 pounds. And then he asked me how I could let myself go like that. I told him I was totally by myself, cooped up in my apartment, and I had nothing else to do but eat. And that's when he said, and I quote, "Well, we need to get you back into the gym to get you in shape again, because I don't want a fat girlfriend." I laughed because I thought for sure he's joking, but then he said, "Stop laughing, it's not a joke." My stomach sank and I felt like I was gonna poop my pants. I started to cry and he told me that I shouldn't be a baby, that he's allowed to be honest with me about stuff like this because it has to do with him being attracted to me. So in other words, he wasn't attracted to me anymore. That's when he went into my room, picked out a pair of leggings and a sweatshirt, told me to get dressed, and took me straight to the gym. He made me exercise for an hour and a half. Instead of getting upset about it, I decided to just take it in stride and go with it. I thought maybe I can get in the best shape of my life now that I have a trainer boyfriend. As we were working out, he kept commenting on my thighs. He said that they needed to have a gap and that instead of being muscular, I was super soft. Again, I started to cry. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After he told me that I was soft at the gym, I started to cry again. I told him that I needed to be more sensitive towards my feelings and that I didn't want to be in a relationship if he was going to be like this toward me. That's when he said that he didn't want to be in a relationship with me because I had gained weight and that's not what he had signed up for. That's when he told me I needed to look around and see all the fit women in the gym and that he could have any of those girls. I was in utter shock. I just couldn't believe that he was talking to me like that and I had never seen that side of him before. The more I cried, the angrier he got, but finally he said, "Okay, I'm sorry. Let's just do 20 minutes on the Stairmaster." That's when I told him I didn't want to work out anymore. Mind you, he had already had me at the gym for an hour and a half. That's when he said, "Fine, I'll take you home, but I'm coming back to the gym." The whole way home, he stayed quiet and gave me the cold shoulder while I cried. He pulled up to my house and I got out of the car and he literally sped away as fast as he could. He proceeded to give me the cold shoulder for the next 2 days. I finally broke and texted him telling him we needed to speak. That's when he said we could talk at the gym. I agreed and he went to pick me up. But the first thing he wanted to do at the gym was put me on a scale and weigh me. I told him absolutely not. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. He was trying to force me to get on the scale so that he could weigh me because he wanted to see how much weight I could lose in 1 week. I kept saying no, but then he said fine. Then he handed me a piece of paper and said, "Here's the diet I want you to follow for the next 4 weeks. I grabbed the piece of paper and just put it in my purse. Then he has the audacity to get mad at me for not even looking at the diet. He said that I was disrespectful and that I didn't even look at the diet and that it took him hours to write all of that out. And then he said the thing that crushed my heart. He would be embarrassed to take me around his friends and family with the way that I looked. As soon as he said that, I ran out of the gym and walked home. Of course, he followed me and told me to get in the car, but I refused. I finally got to my house and he called me. I told him I needed some time away from him and that his behavior was extremely toxic, and that if I didn't have a problem with my weight, neither should he. That's when he said that he was accustomed to only being with girls that were super fit and even had abs. He told me that at first he wasn't convinced if he should date me, but I had a really pretty face, and that he was willing to overlook the fact that I wasn't super fit. He's a total narcissist, but I'm still in love with him. I tried to break up with him, but he said no, and he's still insisting that we just go to the gym together at least. I don't even know how to respond to him. What should I say?
Why do we have to study logarithms? Will they help us with stockbroking? Surely not. Why suddenly create the x and then force us to find it? And why do I have to prove that it's an isosceles triangle? I see clearly that it is. Duh! Then I received the note back saying, "What are you two talking about?" I just figured that another kid had intercepted it. So with my eyes still glued to my level 3692 of Candy Crush, I scrawled back, "Keep your nose out of my business," and then handed the paper over without looking. Ahem. But your business is taking place in my class. I slowly looked up and saw that it was my teacher. Oh, dang. Busted again. Looking over, I saw Brett with his big guilty face. Ugh, he should have been more careful. Okay, you. And you. Out. You're probably wondering how I'm such a pro at this pose. Well, it's because I've done it 1,000 times. And that serious woman over there is Mrs. Megan, my math teacher. I swear, she totally has it in for me. Okay, let me tell you the story. Once upon a time, there was a girl who, due to an unexpected accident with a trash can and an ill-placed skateboard, ended up arriving a teensy bit late for her exam. But the teacher refused to let her in, and also failed her. Grrr. Yeah, that girl was me, Lexi. Thus, from that moment forth, she became my arch enemy. So, during her boring lecture, I threw a paper plane at the board and said, "Miss, you spelled arithmetic wrong. I suppose spelling is a bit hard for a numbers person like you. It's okay." Clearly my comment got to her, as during that same class, she picked on me to graph a function. Huh, easy peasy. So I created a masterpiece that made her eyes roll, and the whole class found it hilarious. And as expected, she gave me a lengthy lecture on my childish behavior, and even threatened to call my parents. Poof! Yeah, good luck with that, as unless it involved business, then my parents were practically impossible to reach. Besides, I was just having a laugh. Mrs. Megan needed to lighten up. So I secretly stuck a piece of paper saying "free hugs" on her back. I lurked behind a tree and watched as all these people surrounded her. She looked so bewildered as she tried to navigate past them while having no idea what was going on. The good old days. Suddenly, Brett patted my shoulder and told me 30 minutes had passed and we needed to go back to class. My butt hadn't even touched my chair when I heard a patronizing voice say, "You shouldn't act like that." Ugh, that's Faye, the teacher's pet and a real pick-me girl. Every time the teacher asks a question, she wriggles her arm in the air and squeaks out, "Me! Me! Me!" Mrs. Megan only likes her because she always laughs at her boring jokes. Oh well, I may have no proof, but in my experience, Faye's definitely not as innocent as she looks. Don't say I'm jealous, 'cause I'm 100% not. You probably think I hate school, but it's still way better than my so-called home. Ugh. At least school could be amusing, while my home life consisted of mom and dad locked away in their office 24/7. I can't remember the last time either of them cooked dinner. So takeaway it is. So I'm texting Ben, my super sexy BF. He's been studying in France, and he's back today. I've missed him so much, but but unfortunately, I couldn't pick him up from the airport because of, school. And tonight, he has a family party, but we're meeting up tomorrow. Yay! Let me see your face, sweetie. I miss you. You know what? Today, that teacher gave me detention again. Really? She messed with the wrong one, didn't she? Definitely. I will retaliate tomorrow. She'd better watch out. Okay, but don't end up in after-school detention, as I want to see you. My mom's also a teacher, but she's not that much. Oh, by the way, she's here. You want to say hello? Yeah, sure. Ben, it gets on my nerves whenever I think of that meek... Before I had a chance to finish my words, a person popped up on the screen. Mrs. Megan! Lexi? OMG. We both gave each other stunned, open-mouthed stares. It looked like the screen had frozen. Literally. Then just when I didn't think it could get any worse, suddenly a familiar voice broke the silence. Oh, Ben has a girlfriend? Let me see her. Huh? That's... Faye! Oh, my days. This is too much to process. My two enemies were in the same frame. Shocked, I ended the call. Right after, I received a text from Ben saying, "Don't worry, my mother may look super serious, but she's kind. And the girl is Faye, my neighbor. We've known each other since childhood, and she's cool." This was so crazy. Now, I'd have to face them both every day, knowing that they are associated with my BF. Oh, the future is as dark as night. And yeah, this is the beginning of the series thusly entitled, Living with My Future Mother-in-Law and My BF's Annoying Female Best Friend. And since then, things at school turned weird. For our class Halloween event, which had a Toy Story theme, Mrs. Megan was in charge of handing out the parts. Faye was Bo Peep, and she had this really cute outfit. While me, I was stuck as Mrs. Potato Head. My outfit was so lame, and one of my googly eyes kept on falling off. Ugh! It was so embarrassing, but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't mess with her anymore, as I still wanted to be with her son. Ugh. Worse still, math class became an endurance test. I was so sick of being compared to that goody two-shoes Faye. Lexi, if you spent more time studying and less time painting your nails, you'd be a top student like Faye. Poof! Faye caught on to what was going on, and also started playing tricks on me. One time in class, when I was dozing and Mrs. Megan was correcting the homework, I overheard, "This symbol shows that A is not equal to B." Faye then turned around and whispered, "Just like you, you're not equal to me. And you don't deserve my Ben either." What? Ben is mine, not hers. I bared my teeth and was about to say something when that brat started pretending to cry, saying that I was picking on her. Out! Mrs. Megan came to us with burning eyes. We were walking out when in a sympathetic tone she added, "Faye, you stay." I returned to my meditating pose, but, I couldn't shake off my anger. How unfair! Later, when it was lunchtime, Faye walked over to me with a cup of Coke, saying it was a peace offering, and that she was sorry for earlier. This was confusing, but whatever. I took it and was about to take a sip when Brett rushed over waving his arms about. "Lexi, stop!" I saw Faye put soy sauce in it. I was just a second away from yelling at her when Mrs. Megan appeared. I smiled smugly, thinking Faye would finally get into trouble. But to my surprise, Mrs. Megan took a sip of the drink and tried to keep a neutral face as she replied, "There's nothing wrong with it." Really? They went that far to cover up for each other? Whatever. I had a date with Ben tonight to prepare for anyway. That night as planned, I arrived at Ben's house with a somewhat wilting pot plant for Mrs. Megan. I was kinda excited to finally have a cooked meal. Only, when I walked into the kitchen, I couldn't smell anything cooking. Mrs. Megan appeared and rubbing her hand said, "Lexi, you don't mind cooking, do you?" It's just been a long week of drawing diagrams. My hand kinda aches. Seeing the situation, Ben immediately came to help, but she reminded him that he'd agreed to fix a pipe or something. To be honest, I'd never touched a frying pan before. But I mean, how hard could it be? I'd make pancakes, though it's not really suitable for dinner, but I'd seen them on a 5-minute crafts, and they were clearly a breeze to make. Only, it didn't go to plan. In situations like this, it's important not to panic. But, yeah, I panicked. I needed a plan B. Quick! In a rush, I threw away all the evidence of the failed pancakes and ordered food online. After all, thanks to my workaholic parents, this was my forte. I instructed the delivery person to come to the back door, so Ben and Mrs. Megan would be none the wiser. Expectedly, at the very first bite, Ben and my mother-in-law praised me profusely for my food, and Ben even joked that I should join the next season of Master Chef. Yo, I will rate this restaurant 5 stars for sure. Mrs. Megan suddenly dropped her spoon, so I quickly bent down to pick it up, only she leaned down and whispered sarcastically, "I order from Sydney's too. Their sauces are divine." Oh, busted! Then, halfway through the night, this man showed up and apologized for being late. Turns out he was Jim, Faye's father, but Faye wasn't coming over as she was out with friends. Happy days! I watched Mrs. Megan and him touch a tissue box at the same time by mistake, and then blushed? Huh? Oh, I get it. She liked him. Now it made sense why she was always sucking up to Faye. Have you thought about remarrying? I asked Jim innocently. To the waiting eyes of me, as well as Mrs. Megan, he hesitantly answered, I don't think Faye would like that. Mrs. Megan glumly stared down at the floor. Okay, so I actually felt kinda sorry for her. Besides, matchmaking has always been my hobby, so I decided to help her. I knew that Faye was at a party on Saturday night, so I decided this was the perfect opportunity to play Cupid. I told Mrs. Megan that Jim had something to tell her, so meet him at the Golden Reef restaurant at 7 p.m. Then I told Jim the same. I stood behind a column and watched them share their starter, and then give each other gooey-eyed glances. Then Jim reached out and took Mrs. Megan's hand. They were looking at each other passionately when Faye suddenly rushed in from nowhere and angrily slammed her bag on the table. So this is it? My teacher and my dad? For real?
Faye, why are you here?
Jim stuttered. No one can ever replace Mom. Then she turned to a dumbfounded-looking Mrs. Megan. Turns out you were only being nice to me to get my dad. You're fake. Stay away from us. Mrs. Megan covered her face with her hands, then quickly left. Jeez, Faye was brutal. And however annoying Mrs. Megan was, she didn't deserve that. You! Faye shouted. Uh-oh, her gaze fixed on me. It figures you'd be behind this. Keep your big nose out of our family business and start caring about yours instead. Guess this is what lack of parental care does to a kid. I stared at her speechless. Those words should have driven me mad, but for some reason, I only felt sad and so guilty. I really just meant well. So, first thing at school the next day, I swallowed my pride and went to Mrs. Megan's classroom, where she looked lost in thought as she marked homework. I coughed to clear my throat, then said, Miss, I'm sorry. I honestly was trying to help, but now I realize I should have minded my own business. I'm also sorry for being a jerk in your class. She was silent at first, then replied, It's okay, as I've come to realize that you and I aren't so different. We both have complications in the way of finding love. Guess it's really not easy to get approval from your parents' family, huh? She smiled and gently stroked my hair before continuing. You're such a smart and kind girl, and I always knew you could do better in class, that I must have been too harsh on you. I'm sorry, too. I smiled back at her, and at that moment, I felt like all of our previous conflicts melted away. And I realized that I shouldn't neglect my studies. Instead, I should work hard to become the best version of myself. So, with a lot of hard work, I went from trailing at the bottom of the class to reaching the top spot, even overtaking Faye. Ha! Speaking of Faye, she was still ignoring both me and Mrs. Megan, and never put her hand up in class anymore. But then a rainbow flame experience in the chem lab changed things. Everyone ran out of there when the curtain caught on fire, except for a terrified Faye. Luckily, Mrs. Megan rushed inside to rescue her just in time, and covered her with a jacket as she led her to safety. After that, Faye realized that Mrs. Megan is a good person who cares about both her and Jim. So, through blurry eyes, Faye sobbed out, "Thank you so much, and sorry, I was too childish. Please forgive me." A few months later. So, yeah, you see, my wing woman plan worked. And now I have a second family, a really big one. But you know what's the best thing? That is, I no longer have to order food online anymore, 'cause I will stick to here, and my mother-in-law will cook for me.
I took off my headphones and switched off my computer. I needed a break, and I needed something to eat. I headed out of my room and was about to go downstairs to the kitchen when I heard some giggling coming from my sister's room. I smiled to myself. This is going to be fun. Without knocking, I barged straight into my sister's room. Her friends all stopped talking and looked at me in surprise.
What do you want, Jason?
Oh, you know, I just thought I'd have a little chat with you and your friends. I could tell my sister was suspicious.
What do you want to chat about?
Oh, I just thought that your friend Mark might like to know something. My sister's face started turning bright red.
Get out of here, Jason. I mean it.
Oh, don't worry, I will. But first, did you know Laura has a crush on you, Mark? Mark began looking really uncomfortable. Really, it's true. She's always talking about you, aren't you, Laura? Laura started screaming at me.
I hate you, Jason. Get out of here, or I'm going to tell Mom.
Okay, I'll leave you two lovebirds alone. I walked out of the room. I could hear Laura slamming the door behind me, but I just laughed to myself. It was so funny embarrassing my younger sister. If you're surprised by this, you're not going to believe what I tell you at the end of this video. I went downstairs to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. I suppose I should have felt a bit sorry for being mean to Laura, but that's what older brothers do to their sisters, isn't it? I had played pranks on Laura for as long as I could remember. One time I balanced a bucket of water on the top of her bedroom door. It was so funny. I waited outside my room for her to come out. You should have seen the look on her face when the water came pouring down over her head. She was soaked from head to toe.
Jason, you are so mean. I've spent ages getting ready for this party, and now look at me.
I just laughed. You have to admit, it is funny. Laura just stormed back into her room and slammed the door behind her. Laura was such an easy target. It was too hard to resist pranking her. One of the worst things I did to her was when it was her best friend Julia's birthday. She was having a big party, and she told me to tell Laura to be at her house at 8 o'clock and to wear her best dress. Now, you're probably thinking that I didn't tell Laura about the party. But no, that would have been too easy. Instead, I told Laura that the party was fancy dress and everyone had to dress up in an animal costume. When Laura arrived at Julia's house, the party was in full swing. As she walked into the room dressed as a big brown bear, everyone stopped and stared at her. Then the whole room broke out into laughter.
Laura, why are you dressed as a bear? It's a fancy dress party, isn't it? No, of course it isn't. Didn't Jason tell you I said to wear your best dress?
Laura's face fell in dismay.
No, he didn't.
When she got home, she was furious with me.
You ruined my night. Everyone was laughing at me. How am I ever gonna live this down?
I just giggled to myself. It was so much fun playing tricks on Laura. It was a couple of weeks after the night I had told Mark that Laura had a crush on him, and I was walking along the school corridor trying to think of something else that I could prank Laura with. Suddenly, as I turned the corner, I spotted a beautiful girl walking towards me. My heart literally leapt out of my chest. I'd never seen anyone so gorgeous in all of my life. I had never believed in love at first sight before, but when I saw her, I knew she was the one for me. Even though my heart was beating like mad and my stomach was full of butterflies, I knew that I couldn't let the opportunity go. So, I took a deep breath and walked over to her. Hi there, I'm Jason.
Hi.
You're new here, aren't you? I haven't seen you around before.
Yes, it's my first day today.
What's your name?
Katie.
Well, Katie, I'd be happy to show you around. That's if you'd like me to. I waited for what seemed like an eternity. Then she gave me a cute little smile.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
So I spent the rest of the day introducing Katie to everyone and showing her where each classroom was and where to go for lunch. At the end of the day, when the school bell rang, I went to say goodbye to her.
Thank you for showing me around today. You made my first day here really easy. I guess I'll see you tomorrow?
Yes, definitely. And,
Yes?
well, we could also hang out outside of school if you want to.
Are you asking me out on a date?
Well, yes, I guess I am. She laughed at my nervousness.
I would love to go on a date with you.
My heart started soaring and my head nearly exploded. I couldn't believe she had said yes. As I walked home from school, I couldn't help but have a beaming smile on my face. We arranged to go out on that Friday night for a pizza, but when Friday came, I was a nervous wreck. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom trying on outfit after outfit. I had no idea what to wear. I didn't want to go looking like a dork. I had to make a good impression. I just couldn't make my mind up, so in the end, I asked Laura to help me. Laura,
What?
come here.
What for?
I need your help.
You're not going to prank me again, are you?
No, honestly.
Are you sure?
Yes, I promise. For a split second, the thought did enter my head that it would have been really funny if I had set up something to prank Laura with. But then again, she probably wouldn't have helped me if I had done that.
Okay, what is it?
You have to help me decide what to wear. Laura looked at me in shock.
What? You want my advice?
Yes, I have a date tonight and I really want to impress this girl. I just can't decide what to wear. I thought for a minute that Laura would be annoyed and not want to help me. But to my surprise, she was really nice.
You should definitely wear the blue shirt. It matches the color of your eyes and makes you look really handsome.
Thank you, Laura. That's a lovely thing to say.
You're welcome.
Laura left my room and I finished getting ready. The date with Katie couldn't have gone any better. We never stopped laughing and chatting. It was so easy with her. It was like I had known her forever. At the end of the night, I walked her home. This was so much fun, wasn't it?
Yes, I had a really good time.
Listen, the new Spider-Man movie is on at the cinema. Do you fancy going to see it tomorrow?
Sure, that sounds great.
I'll come pick you up at about 6 o'clock.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
As I walked home from Katie's house, I had never felt happier. I wanted to run and shout and tell everyone how much I was in love with her. But instead, I just walked along with a stupid grin on my face. When I got home, Laura was waiting for me.
How did the date go?
It was brilliant. Thank you so much for helping me decide what to wear.
Are you going to see her again?
Yes, I am taking her to the movies tomorrow night.
Wow, you must be keen.
I am. She's the most amazing girl I've ever met.
I'm happy for you, Jason.
Thank you, Laura. The next day seemed to drag by so slowly. I couldn't take my eyes off the clock. I thought that 6 o'clock would never come around, but eventually it did. I knocked on Katie's door and she opened it with a big smile.
Hi, Jason.
Wow, Katie, you look stunning.
Thank you. You look good too.
We got to the movies, bought some popcorn, and took our seats. The movie began and we settled down to watch it. About halfway through, I decided to take my chance. I lifted my arm, put it around Katie's shoulder, and pulled her into a hug. She leaned her head on my shoulder, but then all of a sudden, she pushed me away.
Ew! What is that smell? You stink.
I was so shocked. I lifted my arm and smelled my armpit. Oh my God, it's true. I smell terrible. I was mortified. I couldn't believe it. How embarrassing. I'm so sorry, Katie. This has never happened to me before. I must have been in a rush and forgot to use my deodorant. I promise, it will never happen again.
It's okay.
But even though Katie was nice about it, the whole evening was ruined. I couldn't go anywhere near her because I knew she would be feeling sick from the smell of me. I thought that she would never want to see me again. But thankfully, she agreed to another date. Before the date, I made sure I had a really long shower. I used tons of soap. There was no way I was going to risk a repeat performance of our last date. As I walked up to Katie's house, I felt confident that nothing could spoil our date. Oh, how wrong I was. The minute Katie opened the door, her face fell and she screwed up her nose.
Oh my god. Jason, you stink again. In fact, you smell even worse than on our last date.
I was so confused, but I took an hour-long shower. I used loads of soap. I have no idea how I can be so smelly.
I'm sorry. I think we had better postpone this date.
Okay, I understand. It won't happen again, I promise. But unfortunately, it did. It didn't matter how much I showered or how much soap I used. I couldn't stop my terrible BO. I tried hundreds of different products, but none of them worked. Eventually, it all became too much for Katie.
I'm sorry, Jason. I don't think we can date anymore. Not if you can't get your body odor under control.
It's okay, I understand. I was distraught, but I couldn't blame Katie. In fact, I totally understood where she was coming from. Even I couldn't stand the smell of me. It was disgusting. I'd never smelled anything so bad in my life. That night, I lay in bed fretting over my BO problem. What am I going to do about it? This is ruining my life. Suddenly, a noise broke me from my thoughts. What's that? Is it a burglar? I crept out of my room and into the hallway. There's someone in the bathroom. I crept slowly and quietly towards the bathroom door. There was definitely someone in there. I pushed open the door, expecting to see a burglar trying to climb through the window or something. But to my shock, it was only Laura. Laura, what are you doing in here in the middle of the night? That's when I noticed the guilty look on her face. I noticed that she was holding something behind her back. Laura, what have you got in your hand?
Nothing.
Show me.
No.
I mean it, Laura. Show me what you've got in your hand. Slowly, she took her hand from behind her back and showed me the bottle she was holding. What is that? She hesitated for a minute.
It's skunk spray.
It's what? She started laughing.
I've been putting skunk spray on your soap. The more you wash, the smellier you become.
I was furious. I couldn't believe what she had done to me. So that's why soap didn't work on me? You ruined my life. I was so angry with her. I started screaming and lunged at her. The next thing I knew, we were rolling around on the bathroom floor screaming at each other. I hate you. You ruined my chance with Katie.
Well, it serves you right. You've pulled so many pranks on me over the years. Now I have got you back.
You're gonna regret this, I promise you. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened and my mom walked in.
That's enough, you two. What on earth is going on?
It's her. She ruined my date with Katie.
Well, he deserves it. He is always playing pranks on me. He told Mark that I secretly had a crush on him. I was so embarrassed. Come on now. You two are brother and sister. You shouldn't be mean to each other. Now I want you both to make up.
I looked at Laura. Truce?
Truce. That's better. Now get back to bed. Both of you. It's late. Sorry, Jason.
Sorry, Laura. I went back to my room and lay on my bed. If she thinks she's going to get away with this, she is wrong. I need to come up with the biggest prank to get my revenge. Any ideas? Comment them down below.